Hi, Jim, Italian sports guys. Bada boom.
Bada bing.
Kyle, it's good to be back with the ISG Nation after a long hiatus. Good to have some sports back on the docket, too.
Absolutely, Craig. Looks like things are starting to ramp back up. Literally dozens of fans throughout the southeastern part of Louisiana and throughout clamoring for the Italian sports guys. The ISG Nation in full force, asking for their beloved heroes and us to return to sports. So,
Yeah, the ISG Nation will not be denied.
absolutely.
Well, Kyle, it's been a strange year for us, of course. We've had some cancellations. We've had some delays, et cetera. We had some uncertainty with COVID, of course, whether or not we could even pull off this or any other sport. But looks like we're going to be moving forward with the NFL and the Saints, of course. So it's good to see them back. A little strange. What is your sense of all of this? I mean, it seems like it's a little bit hard, I think, for most fans to sort of get ramped up and ready for the season because you don't have that natural lead up with the preseason, et cetera.
I don't think anybody really misses preseason from a fan's point of view from the excitement factor,
Right.
but it is part of the process which allows us to see the Deontay Harris type of players. You can go back through a litany of any fan for any NFL team can, a litany of players who made their bones in training camp when you barely knew who they were when you read their name in the paper, but when you saw them on Friday night or Saturday night, it was a different story. You think to the Ivory, Keith Ivory and Kyrie Robinson, two Saints running backs who really made a name. For, you can insert a million other names there. And so from that standpoint, of course, they missed it. I think the part that's going to have people a little bit perplexed, the quote unquote, how do I act thing, how am I supposed to feel thing is the fact that there's no fans in the stands.
Yeah.
Usually you're ramping up to go to that home opener to, there's not going to be any fans in the stands, not only for your team at home, but when they're on the road, you're going to be watching, it's going to look a little bit different. So I think that's one of the challenges right now.
Yeah, I think the players will adjust and get used to the setting after a few series and get into the flow of the game. But I think you're right. When you start looking at those big moments when the Saints are on defense, the third and longs, when you're trying to get the ball back, I think those are the moments where it's just going to seem odd. You just don't have that. You expect to have that crowd become a part of the game at that point.
Yeah, they're going to do the pumped-in crowd noise thing. It looks like they're going to have possibly the fake fans, the models of the fans, the cardboard cutouts, what have you, like they do in a lot of the baseball games in Major League Baseball. I can tell you this: if I walked in, I was at a resort for a wedding a couple of months ago, and we went into the hotel room between events and turned the TV on and sat down and was looking at something on my phone. And there was a baseball game with an announcer and the fake crowd noise and the cutouts of the fake fans. And, it's peripheral. I'm not staring at the TV, obviously. And in my mind, I was watching. I had to look up and say, oh, yeah, no real fans, fake noise. So from that standpoint, I think it will give you that deja vu of, hey, Sunday NFL, et cetera, et cetera. I think the hard part will be just that. I think home field advantage was such a big deal for the Saints over the last since the Jim Moore era. When things got cooking on defense, it got crazy in that stadium, and the players fed off of it. I think opposing teams are coming in here saying, at least Tampa Bay is, when there's not going to be any fans, saying, hey, take advantage of the fact they don't have any fans here. How much of a home game will it really be? Time will tell.
Yeah, and certainly you mentioned, this. Maybe once the games get started, people will kind of hit home for people that the season really has started. We are going to have a football season. There's so much uncertainty on the college and the high school side as well, but a lot to talk about on the field also. You touched upon one key, Kyle, and that is, of course, as we mentioned, it's a deep roster already. It was going to be hard for outside guys to come in and make the team and make an impression. They lose that opportunity to do so in preseason. So really, in terms of training camp, every snap is important. They've got to make their mark there.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a shortened camp. You don't have any preseason games. The guys that'll really be hurt will really suffer from this are the ones who, were never all through their collegiate careers or all through great practice players, but really showed up when the lights came on and the live bullets started flying. Well, there's no opportunity for you to hold something out for the weekend game. You have to show it every single day in practice. For most guys, they understand that, but it doesn't change what you are. If you're one of those players, this may really set you back and cost you, be a career change. You might be selling insurance as opposed to playing, NFL football. It's a big difference.
Yeah, as opposed to back in the 60s when they sold insurance in the offseason and played football.
Art Donovan, some guys wrestled in the offseason.
Yeah, that's right. Kind of looking at some of the things we're hearing out of camp, and you can expand upon these. We'll get to the Kamara contract situation in just a moment. A couple of things I'm hearing about on the offensive side. Certainly, Drew Brees' arm strength, they say looks good. We're seeing a lot more down.
It looks better.
Yeah, looks better. He said he's using his legs to project and use that to get the strength in his passing game. Looks very sharp, as he always does. Has built some good rapport, apparently, with Emmanuel Sanders. They've done some work to get ramped up for training camp. And also, the one thing we're hearing also is that Deontay Harris, who is certainly an all-pro on special teams, working him more into the flow of the offense. I keep going back to that. A lot of moving parts, wide receivers moving, a lot of reverses, that kind of thing. And maybe even kind of an insurance policy if they can't wrap up this Kamara thing.
Yeah, I think last thing first. To me, the insurance policy for Kamara is Ty Montgomery at this point.
Yeah.
He moves around a lot like Kamara did. He's having a very good camp, kind of quietly. I mean, the whole thing's quietly compared to years past. But Deontay Harris is a guy who has done it as well, in a limited role as a rookie. And they say the biggest jump you make in your professional athletic career is from the first to the second year. So I'm really anxious to see and excited to see what he can do as a contributor to this offense. He's a deep threat. How deep do we throw the ball? Hey, they say Drew Brees' arm looks as good as it has in several years. So time will tell on that. But this is a guy who, once you get the ball in his hands, and we've perfected that short passing game, he can really be a weapon that can cause a lot of headaches for a defense.
What about Kyle? We certainly it was a little bit of a surprise in the draft when we went for a center when we thought we might go some other positions, but seems to be a calculated move by the Saints. They've been working him both at Cesar Ruiz at both guard and center. Now he's missed a little bit of time as well, but it seems like they're trying to give him every chance to win that center job and move McCoy out to guard. What do you think?
Well, it depends on what happens at practice, of course, but to me, on the surface going into it, when you have Eric the Real McCoy coming back for his second season, started every game as a rookie last year, mature guy, called all the signals on the offensive line, he'll be that much better. Again, the year 1 to year 2 improvement. And Ruiz, if Cesar Ruiz is that much better as a center, he's going to play center. But my inclination up front is that let's let this guy worry about less and play a little bit more. Remember LaCharles Bentley, they drafted out of Ohio State as the top-rated center in the draft. Jerry Fontenot was still the starting center here, the Jim Haslett years. And his first start in the NFL was as a rookie against Warren Sapp and the 2001 Buccaneers team that won the Super Bowl. They played the Saints twice that year, of course. Saints beat them both times. He beat the snot out of Warren Sapp, who was the most feared defensive lineman in the league, especially on the interior at that time. Charles Bentley was tough as nails and had a tremendous year as a guard. I think he went to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. The next year, Fontenot, long in the tooth, played one more year with the Saints, but they gave the starting role at center to Charles Bentley and kind of struggled, never really regained that dominance that he had at guard his first year at guard because he was a center in college too. And so it makes me think of that moment where if this guy does play as a guard, as a rookie and has a good year, let's leave him there.
Yeah.
I think that at this point, to me, no matter what the Saints would want, no matter what they think as a staff he may develop into, and giving him every chance and kind of willing, to me, I think he's better suited to play right guard right now. Maybe you do change it next year because they're both such young players. But at this point, you go back to that Vikings game, and we've said this ad nauseum, they beat us up front. No other reason for it. So, all this talk about, and they just added the guy Ngagwe from Jacksonville in the trade, the Vikings, so they got another high-end, top-tier defensive lineman. But if you don't solidify the telephone booth on that defense, that guard-to-guard spot on your offensive line, the quickest way to the quarterback is straight up the middle. And if you can't protect and keep that area safe for Drew, it'll every time it happens, it makes for a very long Sunday. So I think having this kid there with his toughness, his tenacity, I think he's better suited at guard, and I think that's where he'll be.
Looking also on offense, Kyle, it's really, you really think about it, and bringing on Jameis Winston, it's hard to believe we are this good 3 deep at the quarterback position. That quarterback room is really impressive. And with Winston, there were some question marks about character, et cetera, coming in. Really seems to have impressed the Saints. I mean, he's taken a liking to the team. They're taking a liking to him. Learning little things like the names of all the people, the staff in the building. The guys love him. He's really come down with his nose to the grindstone and worked hard. He obviously has the physical skills, but you almost forget this guy was the #1 overall pick not so long ago. So you think about 3 deep, really impressive. this could be quite a quarterback room.
When I look at the pictures in the paper and they show Jameis Winston, who will wear number 2 for the Saints, and he's a big kid. He's thick and everything else. I look at him now in the picture in the paper, and my first recollection is Aaron Brooks, who was beanpole skinny. Okay, he looks more like Aaron Brooks did when he played in uniform than he did last year as a Buccaneer. And I mentioned that because it goes back to what you said about he was humbled. He was not re-signed. He was let go, whatever you want to call it. So far, the fact that he's come into camp in tremendous shape for him tells you that he's taking this very serious. Where it goes as the season goes, who knows? If he ends up being the guy somewhere this year with an injury to Drew, or if he ends up winning the spot next year, if he's here or whatever, however that works, time will tell how much he can keep that up. But right now, you have to check every box on the good side for what he's done in the offseason to prepare himself for a chance to reinvent his career. Not saying he was awful in Tampa, threw for a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns, also threw a ton of interceptions, like record-breaking interceptions, Greg. So I think that he realizes the opportunity in front of him and the chance that he's playing on a team where he's not the leader. They kind of wanted to make him the leader when he got there in Tampa Bay, and he was nowhere close to being ready for that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe given his personality, he tried to do too much. And again, we always talk about it. Sometimes it's just a change of scenery can help guys. And when you have a more senior team, maybe that can mentor you. Maybe it's the right fit for Jameis Winston to excel here.
Top to bottom, a better organization.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. Moving to the other side of the ball, looks like secondary depth is one thing that really impresses me. You know, there've been a lot of reports about how good Patrick Robinson looks in camp. P.J. Williams playing well. Janoris Jenkins is taking another step, being with the Saints a little bit. Swearinger looks good. And a lot of guys that can sort of play, you know, both the slot and move outside. So, you know, you have some uncertainty where you got guys who are a little bit interchangeable, can play safety or the slot or maybe slot or outside. So it's going to maybe create some options for Dennis Allen to really disguise and confuse some offenses.
Key word, disguise, right there. When you don't know, you know, look, teams as good as I thought he was as a football player, as a teammate, as a leader. Remember Roman Harper in coverage was always a hold your breath moment. You won't have that with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You won't even have that with Malcolm Jenkins. Okay, these are guys, and you disguise that coverage like that. You disguise the look. You can't just say, okay, there's the hot read, because all of these guys can cover to an extent. I mean, some better than others, but yeah, absolutely. That the ability to disguise what you're doing is huge for both sides of the ball, obviously. So.
Yeah. How about anything else on the defensive side, College, you've noticed or heard in camp?
Look, you know, we've added. Well, you have Cam Jordan and you have Marcus Davenport, of course, and Onyemata and Sheldon Rankins, but they've added Malcolm Roach, the kid out of Texas, as an undrafted free agent who everyone thinks is going to make this team. Shy Tuttle coming back again, that next year improvement, and I think with Zach Braun.
Matt Ryan's not happy to hear that.
What's that?
Matt Ryan's not very happy to hear that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're getting the stiff arm again. And you have some guys like Trey Hendrickson and guys who have contributed, Mario Edwards, I think, and Malcolm Brown, of course. So I think the Saints are going to have enough depth to where there'll be a defensive line that can play like, and I was going back to it, that Minnesota defensive line against us. And in playoff football late in the game, when you can pressure the quarterback and get sacks in a one-possession game, that's huge. Yeah. You know, enter Danielle Hunter's name right here. You know, look at what he did to the Saints. And if we can get that kind of deal out of Marcus Davenport, that kind of, you know, injury-free, year-long performance, watch out, because I'm telling you, when he is on, he is tough to handle.
Yeah.
So.
I'm looking at, we mentioned Kamara in the contract issue, Kyle, here. Does it, you know, it appears they're a couple million apart from what we can tell. It's somewhere in that, you know, 12 to 14 million range, but seem to be a couple million apart annually is what we're hearing. A lot of different ways this could go. First of all, you try to sign Kamara if at all you can possibly do it. He's a transcendent player. He's as versatile as they come, and so much of the offense revolves around Sean Payton having that sort of guy who's an interchangeable piece so you can move around the offense. If we don't get him back in camp, if we don't get him signed, so to speak, you're going to have to replace him with a lot of different pieces, right, as we mentioned. Latavius Murray did play well in his absence last year, but what are your thoughts? I was a little disappointed that he came to camp and then pulled this, you know, with 10 days left before the beginning of the season.
At first I was too, and I want to hit the panic button, and I want to curse the player, and I want to say, why didn't we sign? All the things that the rabid fan goes through.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this: Michael Thomas did this. Drew Brees missed days in camp before, the two linchpins of this era for the Saints offense, and it's part of the deal. It's part of the business. I think they're going to get a deal done. I think they're going to get a deal done soon, and that was the latest of what we had 2.5 hours ago. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think you'll get a deal done. No one likes the timing, but look, it goes back to a lot of things. He gets hurt, he loses his leverage. He's in the building, he's showing up. He's not staying home. He's just not on a practice field. He's staying in tune with what they're doing. All intents and purposes, he's been a very likable teammate. He's been a very likable guy. He's a fan favorite. Not crazy about some of the stuff with all the recent happenings, but that's something you and I put in a box and let other shows talk about. And you can't let that affect your football IQ as a fan.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
What you want out of all this. So I think, and I know that they need to sign him if they're going to go to a Super Bowl this year. And I think it's Super Bowl or bust at the end of the day. I think that's what steers it to where we make this deal. Nobody's crazy about giving all this money cap-wise to running backs. Todd Gurley did it. He's gone. Falcons did it. That person's gone. Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas. Now they're trying to see what they have for Dak.
Right.
Okay, so there is a reaction down the road to, or a result down the road from when you give too much money to a running back. Keep this in mind. This may be Drew's last year. Kamara is going to be a pretty heavy cap hit if they make this deal. But if Taysom Hill is the quarterback for the next couple of years, he's in at about $7 million a year. There's your switch. So the running back's the high-paid guy, and if Hill's your guy. Now, if you run into a deal where Drew gets hurt, Jameis goes 5-0 like Teddy Bridgewater and has a really good year, and you want to go that route, then you have some moves to make elsewhere. But we'll see how that plays out. But you need to sign this guy if you're going to go to if we want to go to the Super Bowl, in my opinion, because I don't know who you're replacing.
Yeah, and like you said, when you're this close with a Hall of Fame quarterback, you get him in if you can get him under the cap, and you worry about the cap issues for next year. I mean, you got to take your shot here and do the best you can to put the best team on the field. I mean, we realize we have an advantage having a veteran team that's done well the last 3 years, with a lot of teams not having the camp time and a lot of new bodies coming together.
Great point right there. I wanted to bring it up before we dig into that. Another guy, I thought that towards the end of the year, when he had that full grasp of the offense that we underused, was Latavius Murray. There were a couple of games where he was, I don't want to say dominating, but he was very significant in keeping drives alive, moving the chains on straight runs. San Francisco game comes to mind, even the playoff game a little bit, and we didn't quite feed him the ball enough, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When Mark Ingram got on those rolls, Kamara was the decoy and it was Ingram.
Yeah.
And last year I thought that I would have liked to have seen us stick with Latavius Murray in a couple of games. That may have changed some of the dynamic of how things played out with home field advantage and whatnot towards the end of that year. But yeah, if we're going places, if we're going somewhere special, you'd rather have Kamara than get trade value for him.
Yeah. And you mentioned there's a couple guys on the roster. You think about Jared Cook, Latavius Murray. I mentioned Janoris Jenkins, who are going to be in there. Yes, it will be now, fully ingrained in the system, and you expect to see even a greater jump next year. So we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, the what you mentioned about us, with fewer practices and no preseason games, I think the continuity of what the Saints have built here under this Loomis Payton, Drew Brees era is going to be very, very significant. And Cam Jordan and his cronies on defense and the most underrated linebacker in football, and Demario Davis. I'm looking forward to the Saints being able to jump out and be be maybe the best team in the league at the start of the season.
Yeah, no doubt. Any other thoughts on the Saints before we move to the NFL, rest of the NFL, Kyle?
These are strange times, Craig, and a coworker that's a diehard. It's hard to get any productivity out of my office on a Monday because regardless of what happened, because at first, and I'm talking, the person answering the phone to the person who's the newest hire.
Yeah.
How the Saints are to this city, to this state, to South Louisiana in particular. And he asked me, how do you feel about the Saints? Just how do you feel about them right now? And I said, I don't know. I said, there's so many different things that have happened, so many other things we've found to do with COVID going on, so many opinions people have on other outside influences with all this that you kind of don't know how to feel.
Yeah,
quote
right.
unquote. I said, whatever your feelings are about everything, I said, the Pelicans have New Orleans across the front of their jersey, and fans are not in this bubble or not, whatever's going on, I'm going to watch them. And I watched them blow a 16-point lead in the first game and play poorly against the Clippers 1 or 2 games later, and never watched any more of it since. But I know this, for that first game, I was locked in and yelling and cursing when they started blowing that lead, which tells you I care and I'm locked in. I think with the Saints, it'll be an Uber version of that. Unfortunately for my wife and the kids and the neighbors and the dog and anybody else who can hear a human being within a couple hundred yards. So,
yeah. Just quick NFL notes. We mentioned right before the show, breaking news, Leonard Fournette to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Disappointing to see more talent come into our division, but that's the way it goes.
Boy, this really bothers me from the standpoint that 2 guys with exceptional talent, Todd Gurley with the Rams, Leonard Fournette with the Jags, have both been humbled and released and really have something to prove. Todd Gurley, it's a matter of health or not. Leonard Fournette's healthy. Leonard Fournette has something to prove. Leonard Fournette's going to get to play in front of in his home city without fans in week 1. I think you're going to get the very best and most focused professional version of Leonard Fournette, unfortunately for us in our division, that you're going to, we all know here. I mean, I watched him play in high school, for crying out loud. We certainly saw how dominant when he was locked in at LSU he could be. He's going to be locked in, I'm most certain, unless he just doesn't want to play pro football. And boy, watch out, because that's something that you don't need with Tom Brady. Tampa Bay had a weakness, it was their running game.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have O.J. Howard, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, the Goodwin speedster, I think, on the other side, and then Leonard Fournette behind him. If their offensive line is worth a hoot, Tampa Bay takes a giant leap, in my opinion. Maybe I'm a little partial to Fournette because we know so much about him, but when his head is on right, man, he is just a tough customer to bring down.
Yeah, for sure.
And has breakaway speed. He's his friend.
Any other thoughts on the NFL?
Excited that it's here, Craig.
Yeah.
No matter how different it may be, it's going to be live sports, which we've all missed for so long.
Yeah.
In the first big event, the PGA Tour, you would have thought it was Super Bowl 1. I mean, everyone was locked in, and I think, of course, with the NFL, which up to this point has proven to be the most popular sport in America, watch out.
Yeah, it's kind of a fairly captive audience these days, so they should do well. All right, guys, we'll take a brief break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit of LSU Tigers, some changes there, some moving pieces as well, and we'll kind of recap the entire sports world, what we've seen so far out of baseball and basketball. Yeah.
The Italian sports guy.
Bada boom.
Bada bing.